I would say today's daf is Yevamos Daf Tezvav. We have the incredible privilege to learn this daf together. I'm sorry that I can't be there with you in person, but it is an absolute suchos to be able to continue in this limud together, at least virtually. So remember, just to pick up where we left off, the Mishnah introduced us to a fundamental machlokes b'sham b'sil regarding tsaras erva. Halacha l'maisa, is the co-wife of an erva permitted to do yibum or not? Beis Hillel said absolutely not. Beis Shammai says absolutely yes. That then kind of branched out into a general discussion about the machlokes in Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, which then led the Gemara to ask actually a very fundamental question, which was, Asu or lo asu? Did Beis Shammai actually implement their halachic positions, or did they simply espouse halachic ideology, but in practice always followed Beis Hillel? That's the fundamental shaila we're dealing with. So says Dinah, we're picking up 5 lines up from the bottom. Tashma, Dam Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, Hey halacha zu ravachas b'Yisrael. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, I don't understand practically. We have this fundamental machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel regarding Saras Erva. So you have again, Reuven is married to 2 women, Rachel, Leah. Rachel is Shimon's daughter. Leah is unrelated. Reuven dies without children, so now technically both women fall to Reuven for Yibum. Well, we know Reuven can't do Yibum with his daughter, right? So Rachel's out. So the shaila is, what's the implication on Leah? So remember again, Beis Shammai will say there's a mitzvah of Yibum on Leah. Beis Hillel says absolutely not. So let's play this forward. So remember again, if you go forward and you do Yibum according to, right, if you do Yibum like Beis Shammai says you're supposed to do, so Beis Hillel says it's an Isser Erva and Isser Kares, the children of Mamzerim. If, however, again, you don't have Leah do Yibum and she just marries someone on the outside, at least according to Beis Shammai, that would be a lav, that would be a prohibition. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, essentially, he's like, how do we find a middle ground in all of this? To which the Gemara says something amazing. So Nasek divrei Beis Shammai havlad mamzer. If you conduct yourself like Beis Shammai and allow Leah to do Yibum, then according to Beis Hillel, the offspring is a mamzer. The divrei Beis Hillel, Nasek divrei Beis Hillel, and if we conduct ourselves like Beis Hillel, havlad pagum the divrei Beis Shammai. Ultimately, if you conduct yourself like Beis Hillel, therefore don't have Leah do Yibum. Rather, let her go ahead and just marry some guy on the outside. According to Beis Shammai, and that's in accordance with Beis Hillel, according to Beis Shammai, ultimately the offspring would be pagum. Then I both say, the way we'll translate pagum right now is lineologically impacted or damaged. What does that mean? If you take a look at Rashi, Rashi says, Dim haya kohen, so essentially, we would see that according to Beis Shammai, the result of this union with Leah would essentially preclude the children from marrying into the kahuna. That's what's called pagum. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, what should we do? To which Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri has a very simple approach. It's bo nesakin letzaros shucholtzos velo misyavmos. Ultimately, look on top line of Tezvav Amudala 15a. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, therefore, I think the best thing to do is do chalitza. Right? That takes care of everyone. Why? Because if, according to Beis Shammai says that legitimately Leah is chayeves in Yibam chalitza. So let her do chalitza. According to Beis Hillel, Leah is exempt from everything because she's the co-wife of an erva, tsaras erva. But Beis Hillel will say, but Rabbi Yochanan says, so what? So let her do chalitza. What does it matter? It doesn't hurt her. It just kind of is like a halachic insurance policy. So this was Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri's solution. This was his approach. In a case of tsaras erva, the only way to bridge the gap between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, because remember again, the ramifications are so intense, because according to Beis Hillel, if you listen to Beis Shammai, it's an Isser Erva and it creates Mamzerus. According to Beis Shammai, if you listen to Hillel, the offspring is Pagum because there's a violation of a lav. Therefore, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says the easiest thing is, in the case of Tsaras Erva, just do Chalitza. And Shalom Yisrael. So the Gemara says, Lo hispiku ligmaras hadavar achenitra fahasha. It's a very interesting phraseology here. Literally, they were unable to bring the matter to a close, to a decision, before literally Nitra Fahasha, the moment was snatched away. The idea being that Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri has this great idea, but it's almost as if the Ribono Shel Olam, right? Circumstances got in the way and prevented Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri ultimately from trying to incorporate this approach. So Rabbi Silber said, well, one second. So essentially, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri's suggestion sounded like a good one, at least according to Beis Shammai. Remember again, Beis Hillel didn't like it because we already saw on Shabbos, his daf, or on Sunday's daf, I should say, well, Shabbos and Sunday, that remember, when we can't be flippant about doing chalitza either, because when you do chalitza with a woman, that gives her the status of a grusha, that gives her a status of a divorcee, and that has an impact on who she's permitted to marry. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri's never really got the traction it needed to be accepted. So ultimately, again, see, here's what's interesting. So first of all, comes on Rosh Hashanah and he says, but one second. What are you going to do with the people who already conducted themselves like Beis Shammai? In other words, you're trying to figure out a solution. You're looking at the situation now and trying to figure out a way forward. That's fine. What about all of the women who did conduct themselves like Rabbi Yochanan? What about all of the Leahs out there? All of the Leahs who were all co-wives of an erva, followed the suggestion of Beis Shammai, went ahead and did yibum, Now, according to Beis Hillel, they committed adultery, they committed arayas, eshes ach. Again, it was a brother-sister's prohibition. So it's isser erva, kares if done intentionally, mamzerus. What do you do for them? What do you want to figure out a solution going forward? What about those who already acted in accordance with Beis Shammai's approach? So Rabbi Shimon's question of what should we do makes sense only if indeed Beis Shammai didn't only espouse the halachic ideology, but actually acted upon it as well. Then it's a legitimate shaila. What should we do for these people? But if you say that Beis Shammai only espoused the ideology, but never really acted on it, then halacha l'maisa, what's the question of what we should do? Of what should we do? There's no question, because remember again, although Beis Shammai espoused the ideology, l'maisa in practice they followed Beis Hillel. This would seem to point in the direction that halacha l'maisa, that Beis Shammai espoused the ideology and ultimately practiced it. No. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says the shaila. You see, we get a little bit carried away, and we often think that they're focused on the offspring of the tsaras erba who gets married. No, we're talking about what should we do with the tzara herself, Leah herself, the co-wife of the erva. What is the appropriate approach for her? So the Gemara says, "El tsaras atzma uman naaseh hachi kamer." This is what it means to say, "Hanach tzarachs tebeis Hillel beis Shammai heichi navid." What it's really asking is as follows. See, the ramification of accepting the approach of Beis Shammai according to Beis Hillel is obvious, because remember again, in Beis Hillel's mind, what Beis Shammai is telling you to do is an isser erva, punishable by kares, which creates mamzerus. Therefore, the shaila really is as follows: what do you do with the tsaras erva who paskin like Beis Hillel in the eyes of Beis Shammai? What should you do with them? Heichi navid lo lechaltzu. So if you're Beis Shammai, you say to Beis Hillel, come on, just do chalitza. Just do chalitza. Well, that doesn't work. Why? Now let's say, now again, what we're talking about over here is as follows, just to clarify. We're precision focused now on the tzara herself. Remember, Reuven dies, leaves two wives, Rachel and Leah. Rachel is an erva because she's Shimon's daughter. So now we're talking about Leah, the co-wife. So in Beis Hillel's model, Leah is not subject to anything. So Leah goes in and marries Zvulun. She marries a totally unrelated guy. The Gemara now is now asking, well, according to Beis Shammai, this woman did something wrong because she married someone outside of her yavam. She's subject to a lav. Her offspring could be pogum. What could we do to remedy this woman's situation now? What could we do to remedy Leah's circumstances now? So the simple answer would be, let her do chalitza. Just let her do. She's married to Zvulun, it's fine. Just let her do chalitza right now. Can't do that. Why? Mim asya gavrahu. Because I will say, Zvulun is not going to take kindly if his wife starts doing chalitza now with another man. Because the problem in Zvulun's mind is that then it looks like that there's some type of shade being thrown, on his marriage. That lamaisa, that now I'm like in the shadow of something illicit that doesn't look right. So it's going to cause shalom bayis problems for Leah in her second marriage now to Zvulun. So maybe you'll say, who cares? Well, who cares? So let Shimon, the Muslim means be repulsed. So Shimon be repulsed by her. Fine, I'll cause them some shalom bayis problems, they'll get over it. Just do it, it's the right thing to do. But this is so beautiful. The ways of the Torah are pleasant, and all of its pathways are peace. The idea is that the Ribono Shel Olam would not want us to engage in behavior that would erode the quality of one's shalom bayis. Hashem would not want us to go ahead and compromise the marriage of Zvulun and Leah for the sake of satisfying the opinion of Beis Shammai. Tashma. So it's therefore, again, we're still focused on the same thing, which is when Beis Shammai espouses their position, are they just espousing halachic ideology, but in practice they conducted themselves like Beis Hillel? Or no, they took the ideology and they actually implemented it into the way that they practiced halacha. So here we go. But I say this is actually fascinating. Tashma, Rabbi Tarfon says as follows: Ta'aveni, I yearn, like taiva, I yearn. Mosai tavo tsaras habas liyadi ve'asa'ena. When will I have the circumstance to marry my daughter's co-wife? Now, this is an interesting formulation here. So Rabbi Tarfon was saying, now Rashi points out Rabbi Tarfon was one of the Talmidim of Beis Shammai. So Rabbi Tarfon, this is what he says, and then let's interpret what he means. What he says is, I can't wait for the day for my brother who's married to my daughter and another woman, right? So let's say again, Rabbi Tarfon has a brother, let's just call him, again, just to keep everything simple, Ruvain, right? And Ruvain is married to Rabbi Tarfon's daughter, we'll call her Rachel, and to another woman, unrelated, Leah. Rabbi Tarfon says, I can't wait till my brother dies and my daughter and her co-wife fall to me in Yibum. Obviously, I can't do Yibum with my daughter. I can't wait to do Yibum with her co-wife. So we'll say, obviously, this lashon seems to be a bit hyperbolic, and Rabbi Tarfon is trying to make a point. What's his point? The halacha follows Beis Shammai. So this seems to indicate that halacha l'maisa, that Beis Shammai didn't just espouse halachic ideology, but in fact, it was followed in practice. To which the Gemara says, Ema va'asiena. No. Don't read it as Rabbi Tarfon saying, I will marry her. Rather, Rabbi Tarfon was saying I will marry her off. Should my brother Chas v'Shalom pass away and my daughter and her co-wife fall to me in Yibum, my daughter obviously is not subject to Yibum. And Rabbi Tarfon was saying, we paskin like Beis Hillel, that the co-wife of an erva is also not subject to Yibum, and therefore again, I will marry the co-wife off to someone else. But he used the lashon of like taiva. I desire, I want. Toiv, I'm hungry. I yearn for it. No, he used that lashon in order to go ahead and discount and really write off the position of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Because remember, what does Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri say? Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, in any case of tsaras erva, just do chalitza. Just do chalitza, because that makes everyone happy. Beis Shammai is happy because they hold this woman was subject to Yibum and chalitza. Beis Hillel, it's not going to matter one way or the other. So Rabbi Tarfon is coming along to say we don't paskin like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. And halacha l'maisa, in the case of a tsaras erva, she is free to marry anyone who she wants, and there is no need for chalitza. Tashma. It happened that the daughter of Rabbi Gamliel was married to her uncle, to her father's brother, to Abba. Abba was the brother of Rabbi Gamliel. So Rabbi Gamliel's daughter is married to his brother Abba, umeis below banim. And ultimately again, Abba died without children. The Yibim Rabbi Gamliel as Tzarasa. Rabbi Gamliel did Yibum with his daughter's co-wife. So again, sounds pretty clear there. Passing like Beis Shammai, and Beis Shammai is not just espousing ideology, but rather telling us practically what to do as well. I have a tizbira. Rabbi Gamliel mitamid Beis Shammai. But one second, was Rabbi Gamliel one of the talmidim? Was he of the students of Beis Shammai? There's Bipashtos, Rabbi Gamliel was a direct descendant of Hillel. So it would appear that Rashi points out over here, Rabbi Gamliel was a direct descendant of Hillel. So it would be strange to say that Rabbi Gamliel paskined like Beis Shammai, so which the Gemara says, Elashayni bito Rabbi Gamliel, the islandess havi. This is very interesting. It was different. Rabbi Gamliel's daughter was an islandess. Now, as remember again, an islandess is a woman who's not only incapable of having children, but does not develop the female qualities, right? Female characteristics. So I will say it is generally assumed that halacha l'maisa, a marriage to an islandess is a mekach tos. essentially it's a voidable marriage, not avoidable, a voidable marriage. Mekachtos. So Rashi points out there that the Mishnah said that in a case where the wife was an aylinus, the tzara, the co-wife, is permitted in yibum. It's permitted in Yibum. So therefore, both say that's the case over here. Rabbi Gamliel's daughter was an aylinus. Because she was an aylinus, it was as if she was not married to Abba, his brother. Therefore, again, there's no tsaras erva situation. So when Abba passes away, Rabbi Gamliel does Yibum with the wife, with the other wife, the non-aylinus wife. To which the Gemara says, "Hamidiktoni seifa achirim on bitosh Rabbi Gamliel aylinus haisa mechlal de tanakama savar lav aylinus haisa." Here's the problem. Later on in the Mishnah, it says that others say that the daughter of Gamliel was an aylinus, which sounds like the Tanakama, the first part of the Mishnah, doesn't agree that she was an aylinus. So how do you reconcile everything? Hikir ba v'lo hikir ba ika benayu. Possibility I will say is that maybe when the wife is an aylinus, it depends. Did the husband know about it before the marriage, or didn't he know about it before the marriage? If he knew about it before the marriage, he knew about it, he accepted it, and therefore the marriage is valid. If he didn't know about it, ultimately, again, the marriage is invalid. Hikir ba, so the Gemara says, Hikir ba v'lo hikir ba. The other possibility is, Kanos ulbasov garashik. Or the other possible point of contention between the Tanakama, ultimately again, and the Seifa, the Achirim, what we'll call Tanakam and the Achirim, could be a situation of what? Where halacha l'maisa, we had this 2 days ago, that when is the Yibum construct concretized? Is it concretized and solidified at the time of marriage? In which case, if at any point during the marriage, the brother was married to both an erva, a woman who's an erva to another one of the brothers, and another wife, that other wife, that tzara, is forever precluded from Yibum? Or do we say no? The Yibum construct is concretized at the time of death. So perhaps that's the machlokis occurring in this Mishnah as well. So the Gemara says, "V'ibay sema kines lebasov gib." Right, "V'ibay sema yesh tanai b'bia ikebenau." The other possibility is ultimately again, is there a tanai and bia? In the case in tanai and bia, and we'll discuss this in greater depth. The case in tanai and bia is as follows: let's say a man marries a woman, and he says, "I'm marrying you on the condition that you have no physical blemishes," and then it turns out he has relations with her; she has physical blemishes. So we'll say, what's the status then of this relationship? So one opinion says, Yech Tanai Babia, he made a Tanai, she didn't fulfill the Tanai, she didn't fulfill the condition, therefore the marriage is void. The other opinion says, no, once a man has had relations with a woman, he does not want his act of relations to be relegated to a case of bias znos, an act of immorality. Therefore, once there's bia, essentially the Tanaim go ahead and fall off on it. And so we'll say, just 3 different ways to reconcile the opinions of the Tanakama and the Achirim in this Mishnah. Masiv Rav Misharshia, Mais Rabbi Akiva, Sheliket Esrog Be'echad B'Shvat. Very interesting case. One time Rabbi Akiva picked an esrog on the 1st of Shvat. V'noig bo beis isurin. And he tithed the esrog with 2 different tithes. Echad kedivrei Beis Shammai ve'echad kedivrei Beis Hillel. Ultimately, again, one in accordance with Beis Shammai, one in accordance with Beis Hillel. Now, what does this tell? Take a look at Rashi. So Rashi is almost right across. The case in question was when it was the year number 2, going into year number 3 of the Shemitah cycle. V'nohag ba shnei isurin, ma'aser sheni kebeis Hillel. Darminan tu b'shvat rashana li'ilana. So remember again, according to Beis Hillel says the new year for trees is the 15th of Shvat, which means that on the 1st of Shvat it's still year 2. Because it's still year 2 of the agricultural season, Meiser Sheni applies. According to Beis Shammai, the new year for trees begins on the 1st of Shvat, in which case the 1st of Shvat is already year 3, and then ultimately again, year 3, you don't have Meiser Sheni, year 3 you have Meiser Ani. So Rabbi Akiva went and picked an esrog on the 1st of Shvat, and essentially he tithed it like 2nd year produce according to Beis Hillel, i.e. Meiser Sheni, and like 3rd year produce according to Beis Shammai, i.e. Meiser Ani. So I'll say, what do you see from here? Shmamina also, it's clear from here that not only did Beis Shammai espouse ideology, but they acted upon it as well. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva Gemara is topically for lo yada I Beis Hillel be'echad b'shvat amar obetu b'shvat amar. This is incredible. No, we pass like Beis Hillel. Rabbi Akiva passed like Beis Hillel also. Rabbi Akiva wasn't sure what the position of Beis Hillel was. Does Beis Hillel hold that it's the 1st of Shvat or the 15th of Shvat? That's the Rosh Hashanah for trees. So because he was unsure about the Shita of Beis Hillel, he conducted himself in accordance with both tithing years. But that was not an effort to accommodate the position of Beis Shammai. Fakir, just the opposite. He held like Beis Hillel, but he just wasn't sure what the Shita Beis Hillel was. Incredible. So massive Marzucha raised the kasha. One time the daughter-in-law of Shammai, the elder, gave birth. This was Sukkis. And what did Shammai do? Shammai opened the roof on top of the cradle, on top of the crib of the little baby, put schach there so that the baby should be in the crib. What do you see from here? So that the baby should be in the sukkah. Shma mina asu. Seems to be clear that Beis Shammai did act in accordance with their positions. Hasam hara omer la'afushe avir kavod. No, it's different there. But remember again, this whole discussion that we're getting into, did Beis Shammai conduct themselves like their rulings or not, gets into the discussion of lo tiskodedu, lo sasu agudos. Do not make different camps. Don't make it look like there's more than one Torah. Don't do that. But what we do see, however, is when you could accommodate another halachic position and people could ascribe your motivations to something else, that's not a violation of lo sasu agudos. That's not creating Judaic factionalism. We saw it in yesterday's daf, where the Gemara spoke about the minhag to work or not work on Erev Pesach. And the Gemara said, if you don't work, let's say in a place where they do work and you don't work, that's not called factional Judaism. Why not? Because people will assume, why aren't you working? You have nothing to do. Same thing over here. When Shammai opens up the roof and puts schach on top of the baby's crib, so lamaisa, that doesn't automatically look like it's Shammai espousing his own ideologies. He wants airflow. Apparently it wouldn't have been so unheard of to go ahead and crack open the roof a little bit to get a little extra air flowing through, and that's what his actions could be interpreted as. Incredible. Massive Marzutra Maisa b'Shokes Yehu Shaisa b'Yerushalayim v'Aisen Kuvala Mikveh v'Chol Taro Shahayu b'Yerushalayim Nasan Al Gaba. Interesting case of Osai. Shokes Yehu. Shokes Yehu literally means like the trough of Yehu. This was, Rashi points out over here, Even Chalula, Shetachas Tzira Mekalech Ma'im Minahar. This was, I will say, a hollowed out stone. And in this hollowed out stone, it collected water. Now this was water that was flowing from the mountain. Now watch this. So what happened in Shokes Yehu? That's what it's called, the trough of Yehu, or the hollowed out stone of Yehu. Now, this stone opened up into a legitimate mikvah. Remember, a mikvah requires 40 sa'ah. So this stone receptacle opened up, right? There was a hole in between the stone receptacle and a regular mikvah. Now, we saw this concept before, the concept of hashaka. Hashaka means that if you have a smaller body of water that by itself is not a kosher mikvah, but it opens up to, or really it's connected to, it kisses a larger bona fide kosher mikvah, so the attachment, the kissing of the smaller mikvah to the larger mikvah gives kashrus, allows the smaller mikvah to be a legitimate mikvah as well. So this Shokes Yehu was the smaller collection of water, but it was attached to, was kissing the larger body, another larger mikvah. And what happened? And they used to go ahead, and in Yerushalayim they used this to purify everything. What happened? V'shalchu Beis Shammai v'herchivu. Beis Shammai says you have to extend the opening between the shokes and the mikvah. You have to extend. They felt the opening was too narrow, too small. You have to make it much bigger in order to connect the two. So the Gemara says, V'shalchu Beis Shammai v'herchivu. Shebeis Shammai omrim ad she'ipasech beruba. Beis Shammai says that the majority of the wall between the shokes and the mikvah has to be open. The majority has to be open. Utnan. Yet we learned Eruv mikvos. How do you go ahead and literally combine or mix two mikvos? In other words, how do you accomplish hashaka, the kissing of one mikvah to another, to allow even the smaller mikvah to kind of piggyback on the kashrus of the larger mikvah? It's very simple. Ultimately, all you need is an opening that is as large as the straw, really the circumference of the straw of a wineskin or of a leather skin. And how much is that? 2 fingers, so that 2 fingers could go ahead and go in and out easily. That's the opening that you need for hashaka. Shmamina asu. We'll say, so once again, what do you see from here? You see from here that Allah say clearly Beis Shammai didn't just espouse ideology, but they acted on it. Right? They acted on it here. They're instructing the people to go ahead and widen the opening between Shokes Yehu and the larger mikvah. So it's clear that they didn't just espouse, but they also went ahead and acted Amud Beis, it's different there, the Gemara says, sorry. So Hassam, it's different. Why? Haroa Omer La'afushe Ma'yahu Dekavim. The truth is, Beis Shammai was comfortable telling people to do this. Why? Because when you see people widening the opening between the Shokes Yehu and the Mikvah, or Shokes Yehu and the Mikvah, you don't have to automatically ascribe that to the fact that we're paskin like Beis Shammai. You could just say they want more water flowing. They want more water flowing from the larger Mikvah to the Shokes. Good. So the Gemara says, Tashma. Listen to how beautiful this is. Rabbi Elazar Bar Tzadok says, when I was learning Torah by Rabbi Yochanan HaChorani, it was by his Rabbi, I saw that all he was eating was dried out bread, dipped in salt, and this was in the midst of a famine. So all he had was some dried out bread and salt. Ubasi v'hodati es Abba. And ultimately, again, Rabbi Elazar said, I came and I told my father, Rav Tzadok, Amrali, holech lo zesim. So Rav Tzadok said to his son Rabbi Elazar, go take Rabbi Yochanan HaChorani olives. Go take him some olives. Take him a barrel of olives. V'olachti lo. I brought, so again, now there's Rabbi Elazar talking. I brought Rabbi Yochanan HaChorani olives. Ra osan shein lochin. He saw that the olives were moist. Now, both say, now what's the problem if the olives are moist? If the olives are moist, ultimately, again, that means they're huchshel kabel tumah. That means they are receptive to tumah. Now, the problem just is that halacha l'maisa, if they are being transported in an earthenware vessel, they could have come in contact with an ama aretz, a person ignorant of the laws of tumah and tara, and they could be tameh. So Rabbi Yochanan HaChorani sees that the olives are moist. So what does he say? Amar li, ein ani ochel zeisim. Rabbi Yochanan says, oh, thank you so much, but I don't eat olives. I don't eat olives. Now, both say, no, that's not the pshat. Rabbi Yochanan only ate olives. But rather, again, he was saying, I don't eat olives because he didn't want to eat these olives because he was concerned that ultimately, again, they may be tameh. So, both say, so brought down in his Sefer Mishnah Rabbi Aaron, that Rabbi Aaron Kotler says something so incredibly beautiful. He says, Lamadnu mikan, we learned something so profound from here. Godol hazihirus bichvod chavero. How careful a person has to be with the honor and dignity of their fellow. Sha'amar eini ochel zeisim v'lo amar hachashash detuma shelo yachshav kipigia bichvod shrab tzadok. So we'll say, isn't this absolutely incredible? The Gemara says over here, we know the reason Rabbi Yochanan HaChorani said he doesn't want the olives is not because he didn't eat olives, because he was scared, he was nervous that maybe they're tameh. But he didn't want to say that. Why didn't he want to say that? Because he did not want to chas v'shalom in any way offend Rav Tzadok. Rav Tzadok went ahead and sent him this beautiful gift. So again, he doesn't feel comfortable eating it because l'mais, again, he's concerned about the tumah, but he can't say that. I mean, he can say it, but he won't say it. And Rabbi Aaron Kotler says over Yisifim is something so incredibly beautiful, that halacha l'maisa, at the end of the day, that even though Rabbi Yochanan HaChorani has nothing, I must say, just to be clear, Rabbi Yochanan HaChorani is eating old bread with salt, which means things are pretty bad. Things are pretty bad. If that's where you're up to in your life, the olives would have been a welcome addition to his life, a sustaining addition to his daily life. He didn't want to eat it. This was his own hakpadis. He was concerned about tumah. But you can never allow your personal pursuit of ruchnius, or to say differently, you can never allow your pursuit for heightened bein adam lemakom to erode your bein adam lachavero. See, sometimes we think that in the pursuit of a higher and holier relationship with Hashem, I could trample over people. Right? It doesn't matter, right? It's holy war. I could do whatever I need to do because I'm this is all about God. All about God. I'm meshuggah for God. And if I'm meshuggah for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whatever collateral interpersonal damage there may be on the way, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And it's not true. It's not true. Because ultimately, again, growth in bein adam lemakom, that is paved with taking liberties in my bein adam lechavero, growth in my relationship with God, that is paved with taking liberties and trampling on other people, that's not growth in bein adam lemakom. That's not growth. And it's a lesson we have to internalize, because sometimes we become so focused just on our ben adon lamakom that we forget about the collateral interpersonal damage that's happening when we relate to other Jews, and maybe Jews who don't even share the same level of observance with us. How careful we have to be in maintaining the dignity of every single Jew. Yes, I have to maintain my own behaviors, and I have to maintain my own levels, and I have to maintain my own spiritual responsibilities to Hashem. But I have to do so with a constant sensitivity to the other. So therefore, again, Rabbi Yochanan Charon, he's not going to eat the olives. Basivo das yes abba. So listen, Rabbi Lazar comes back and he says, I told my father what happened. Amar li lech amar lo chavis nukuva haisa ela shisasmuha shmarim. Go and tell him, no. What happens is, it was a barrel with a hole on the bottom. The goal was to allow all liquid to come out because they did not want the olives to get wet. Remember, again, only coming in contact with a liquid that the owner of the produce wanted to get wet. It's only if the owner wants the produce to get wet that the produce becomes huchsher lekabel tumah. But if the owner doesn't want that, then lemaisa it doesn't become huchsher. It's not ready. It's not receptive to tumah. So comes along Rav Tzaddik and says, Rabbi Lazar, go back and tell him there was a hole on the bottom of the barrel so that it drains. It got plugged up with olive dregs. So because it got plugged up, that's how the olives got wet. But the olives are not hochshel lekabel tumah. It was never my intention that they should get wet. Therefore, the olives are not receptive to tumah. Enjoy them. Utinana, we learned, if you have a barrel that's filled with soft olives, Beis Shammai says you do not have to go ahead and make a hole on the bottom of the barrel. And the reason for that is because, without getting into all the technicalities over here, Beis Shammai holds that the juice that comes out of the olives, not pressed, but the juice that flows out, is not the type of liquid that makes something Roi lekabel tumah, does not make something receptive to tumah. Beis Hillel says no, the juice that comes out of the olives can make something receptive to tumah if you want the liquid. But if you place a hole in the bottom of the barrel where it's clear that your intention is for it to drain, then halacha lemaisa, it's not a problem. Modim, and everyone agrees shem nikva v'sasmua shmarim shi tahora, and everyone agrees that halacha lemaisa, that if there was a hole and the hole got plugged up and as a result the liquid accumulated in the barrel, that ultimately that does not make the olives receptive lekabel tumah. Since halacha lemaisa, you didn't want the olives to get wet. V'afapi shetalmid Shammai haya, and even though again he was a talmid of Beis Shammai, nevertheless kol ma'asav lo asa ela kedivrei Beis Hillel. He conducted himself in every way like Beis Hillel. To which the Gemara says, if you want to say that in fact Beis Shammai normally acted upon their halachic positions, Hainu Rabuse. Then Rabbi said this case is a chiddush, because even though you have a case of a talmid of Beis Shammai, he was conducting himself like Beis Hillel, and that's how Rab Tzaddik went ahead and made a hole on the bottom of the barrel, because that again, Rab Tzaddik himself, who was a talmid of Beis Shammai, conducted himself like Beis Hillel, made a hole in the bottom of the barrel, allowed the barrel to drain. So you see this. So now again, if you say that Beis Shammai normally went ahead and conducted himself in accordance with his own halachic positions, this case is a chiddush because this is a case of Beis Shammai who's conducting himself like Beis Hillel. However, the Gemara says, Eli amrit lo asu, my Rabbi say. But if at the end of the day you say that Beis Shammai never really conducted themselves in accordance with their own halachic positions, they espoused the halachic ideology, but never actually practiced this way, then what's the great chiddush in the case? Tashma. Shalos Rabbi Yeshua. So I'll say, so again, we're still kind of unresolved. We're going through the same question over here. We have Machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. We've taken care of the Lotus Godedu problem, but at the end of the day, we're still trying to figure out, did Beis Shammai actually conduct themselves in accordance with their halachic positions or not? So Tashma, Shalos Rabbi Yeshua, Tzaras Habas Mahu. That's Rabbi Yeshua. What is the halacha with Tzaras Habas? Right. So remember again, Ruvain is married to Rachel and Leah. Rachel is his niece, Shimon's daughter. Ruvain dies. So now again, two women fall to Shimon for Yibum. Rachel, his daughter, and Leah, the co-wife. Tzaras Habas, the co-wife of the daughter. So they ask Rabbi Yeshua, what is the status of Leah? What's her status? Amar lehem machlokes Hesham Beis Hillel halacha kedivrei. So he said to them, it's a machlokes. It's a Mishnah. Beis Shammai says Tzaras Habas is chayiv in Yibum. Beis Hillel says she's exempt from Yibum. Halacha kedivrei mi. So listen to this. So they asked Rabbi Yeshua, "No, who does the halacha follow?" Listen to this. Amar lahem mipnei ma'atem machnisin roshi ben shnei harem gedolim Why are you putting my head between two mountains? Ben shtei machlokos gidolos, between two such a great machlokes. Ben besham beisel. Why would you ask me who the halacha follows? Right? Why are you putting me in the middle of such a dramatic machlokes? Now watch this. Misyare ani shema yarutzu galgalasi. I'm afraid they're gonna literally again yarutzu crush my skull. So this is interesting. So apparently, Rabbi Yeshua was actually scared that if he were to paskin one way or the other, that halacha lamaisa, he would be subject to some type, or he would be in danger, some type of physical danger. Aval, but here's what I will tell you. So therefore, he doesn't want to paskin straight out. But here's what I will tell you. Aval ani meyed lochem. But what I will tell you about is al shtei mishpachos gidol shai b'Yerushalayim. There are two great families in Yerushalayim, Mishpachas Beis Tzivoim mi Ben Achmai, the family of Beis Tzivoim who descended from Ben Achmai. These are people, or Mishpachas Beis Kofai, and the Kofai Mishpacha mi Ben Mekoshesh. They are descended from Mekoshesh. Shehem Bnei Tsaros. So interesting that ultimately again they are descendants of a woman who was a tzara to an erva, right? We keep going back to Leah, right? Leah, the wife of Rachel, right? The two wives of Ruvain. Rachel is the daughter of Shimon. So they are descendants of Leah, who after her husband died married another man without yibum and without chalitza. That's all I could tell you. Umehem kohanim gidolim v'shimshu al gabi hamizbeach, and ultimately from those families descended kohanim gidolim, high priests, who served in the mizbeach. This is very interesting. So essentially, Rabbi Yeshua is going to say, look, I'm not going to tell you who the halacha follows, but what I will tell you is that there are families who conducted themselves like Beis Hillel, and therefore the tsaras erva got married without yibum, without chalitza, or there is no yibum in chalitza. They married. And these are some of the finest families in Yerushalayim, to the point that from these families came Kohanim Gidolim. Ultimately, again, Kohen Gadol and Kohanim who went ahead and served on the Mizbeach. So, if you hold that Allah Lamaisa, Beis Shammai indeed practiced what they preached. In other words, they didn't just espouse ideology, but they actually held this way. Then it makes sense when Rabbi Yoshua says, I'm scared to paskin. Makes sense. In other words, it makes sense to say that he was scared that somebody would get angry at him. But if at the end of the day, Beis Shammai never really conducted themselves in accordance with their halachic positions anyway, so why would Rabbi Yoshua be upset? To which the Gemara says, Unihi nami da'asu, my misyare. And even if Beis Shammai did go ahead and conduct themselves in accordance with their halachic positions, what exactly is it that he is afraid of? Right? What is it exactly that he is afraid of? To which the Gemara says, listen to this. I'm sorry. My misyare ha'am Rabbi Yoshua ein mamzer ella mechayve misos bezdin. Now I'm going to say Rabbi Yoshua is of the opinion that, interestingly enough, a mamzer only comes about according to if a man violated something, or if I should say a union was subject to misas bezdin. Now I will say, remember, was subject to death at a court. Now remember, Eshes ach, that prohibition is punishable by kares, not by misas bezdin. Right? You don't get put to death in bezdin by that. That's kares. So what is Rabbi Yeshua nervous about? If what he's going to say the halacha is like Beis Hillel, and therefore what? You see, I would have thought what he was nervous about was Beis Shammai is going to get angry at him because essentially what he's calling potentially their offspring are mamzerim, according to Beis Hillel. But Rabbi Yeshua himself holds that no, mamzer is only created by something that is punishable by death penalty in court, not kares and eshes ach. In other words, from Beis Hillel's perspective, if you follow Beis Shammai in accordance with Rabbi Yeshua's interpretation, the union only produces chayve lavin, right? But won't produce mamzerim. Or I should say, it won't nachayve lavin. It won't produce mamzerim. So what is Rabbi Yeshua nervous about? To which the Gemara says, Nihi nami de mamzer lo havi pagum mio havi. At the end of the day, even though according to Rabbi Yeshua, the offspring of Beis Shammai through the lens of Beis Hillel would not be mamzerim, they would be pagum. They would be pagum. And I will say pagum goes back to the status, what we call lineologically damaged or blemished. Now, normally where this manifests itself is in an inability to marry into the kahuna. After all, the Gemara says, Mikavachomer mi almana, because the truth is the kavachomer from almana. What's the case of the almana, the widow? Ma almana she'eni sur nohag b'kol. So we'll say in general, the only person who can't marry a widow is who the kohen gadol. That's the only person who can marry almana. Anyone else is permitted to marry an almana? Bana bina pagum. If she does marry a kohen gadol and they have a child, that offspring ultimately is what? Pagum. That offspring cannot marry into the kahuna. Zu. She surah shava bakol. So this woman, i.e. the tsaras erva, who according to Beis Shammai is obligated to do yibum and doesn't do so, instead marries someone else, all the more so, ultimately again, her offspring will be subject to the prohibition. Her offspring will be pagum. Her offspring will be blemished for the kuna. To which the Gemara says, interestingly enough, kabo minei tsaros dekapashet le b'nei tsaros. It's actually interesting. The question they asked Rabbi Yoshua was, what's the status of the tzara? Right? What should the tzara do? What should tsaras erva do? Is she obligated in yibum or not? And Rabbi Yoshua answers them not with tsaras erva, but rather again with b'nei tsaros, the offspring. Your offspring. Tarti kabai mine. The truth is, they were asking from him two questions. Saros mai. Question number one was tsaras erva. Does she do yibum or not do yibum? That was question number one. Question number two, vim timsi lomar tsaros ke Beis Hillel, and if you paskin that we say like Beis Hillel, namely that a tsaras erva does not do yibum, b'nei tsaros te Beis Hillel lebeis Shammai mahu. The offspring of that tzara, therefore, who never did yibum, because according to Beis Hillel, they don't have to do yibum. How would and now let's say again, Leah goes and marries someone else. How would Beis Shammai view that offspring? To which the Gemara says, "Lamai nafkamina." What does it matter to us? I'll tell you why it matters. Lemifshat vlad machzir grushaso lebeis Hillel. We'll say, I'll tell you why it matters. Because what Beis Shammai is going to rule regarding the offspring of tsaras erva, who marries someone else. Remember again, same case. You have Ruvain, right? Ruvain has two wives, Rachel, Leah. Ruvain dies. Rachel's the daughter of Shimon. So therefore, again, no yibum for Rachel. Beis Hillel will say no yibum for Leah either. Beis Shammai would say Leah's chayeves in yibum. Okay, Leah goes and marries someone else in accordance with Beis Hillel. Leah marries Zvulun. They have children. What I want to know now is, how does Beis Shammai look at those kids? How does Shammai look at those kids? So you'll see to yourself, who cares? Who cares how Beis Shammai looks at the kids? We go ahead and we pass like Beis Hillel. I'll tell you why it matters. Because there's another case, a parallel case. The parallel case of Osai is a man divorces his wife, right? Reuven divorces Leah. I'm sorry, I'm using the same names. Reuven divorces Leah. Leah then goes in and marries Shimon, not Reuven's brother, just another guy. Then what happens? They get divorced. Reuven's not allowed to remarry Leah. Right, that's machzir grushasa. You could remarry the wife you divorced as long as she's married no one else in the interim. But when she's married someone else, you can't remarry her. So she's married Shimon. Shimon divorces her. She now remarries Reuven. So they get married. Now they have children. What's the status of those children? So the Gemara wants to suggest the way Beis Shammai would view the children of a tsaras erva who marries someone else, Leah, who marries Zvulun. The way Beis Hillel would view, the way Beis Shammai would view those children is the same way that Beis Hillel would view the children of Machzir Grushaso. So I want to know, how does Beis Shammai view the children of a tsaras erva who never did yibum and chalitza, instead went and married someone else and had kids with that someone else? How does Beis Shammai view those kids? Because however Beis Shammai views those kids, that's exactly how Beis Hillel is going to view the kids of Machzir Grushaso. To which the Gemara says, Mi kamrin kavachomer. Do we see a kavachomer? Uma almana lekohen gadol sheni surah shava bechol. Same kavachomer we said before. An almana who's not allowed to marry a kohen gadol, right? But that's all, right? She can marry anyone else. Yet, if she does marry a kohen gadol, bana pagum. Ultimately, again, her offspring is pagum. Zo sheisura shava bakol enodin shebana pagum. Then I both say this woman again, in this case Leah, the tsaras erva, who again does have an isser, or really ultimately again it's also the machzir grushaso, who does have an isser. Her child should certainly be pagum. O dilma. Or perhaps you could also make a distinction and you could say ma la'amana shehi atzma mischalalas. Ultimately, again, perhaps you could also say almana is different. Why is almana different? Almana is different because it's not just when an almana marries a kohen gadol, it's not just the pshat that her offspring becomes pagum, but she herself becomes pagum. Va'amar lehu tsaros misyare. Va'amar lehu tsaros misyare ani top of Tazayim, B'nei Tsaros ani me'id lochem. So both say to this, ultimately again, to this Rabbi Yeshua responded, listen, I'm not going to get involved in the case of Tsaros. I'm not going to comment on that. However, again, I will tell you about B'nei Tsaros. Rashi says, B'nei Tsaros, te Beisila kaba isu, im heim pagumin. So ultimately, again, Me'elechem Rashi says, Shem Kagandolos. Therefore, again, Rabbi Yeshua essentially says, look, I'm not getting involved in this. I'm not answering your question about Saros, because answering your question about Saros requires me to directly insert myself into the Machlokes Beisham Beis Hillel, and I have no interest in doing that. What I will tell you is that halacha l'maisa, there are families who follow the position of Beis Hillel, right, by Tzaras Erva, and they are the most prominent families, Kohanim Gedolim, serving in the Beis HaMikdash, and draw your own conclusions from that. So it turns out that halacha l'maisa, we still haven't resolved our issue, our core issue, which is that did Beis Shammai act upon their own halachic rulings or did they just espouse halachic ideology? In Meretz Hashem, to be continued tomorrow. Shkar Chabosai, such an incredible schus to learn with all of you, such a beautiful daf. Have a great day.